Chair. Mr. President, first, on behalf of Senator Nelson of Florida, I ask unanimous consent that Maria Honeycutt be granted floor privileges for the duration of the Senate's consideration of this legislation.
Without objection, so ordered.
I thank the chair. Mr. President, for the first time in the history of the Senate or of the House, a comprehensive bill to curb global warming has reached the floor after having been reported favorably by the Committee of Jurisdiction. This has happened, in my opinion, because of two people. One is Senator Warner, who joined the fight early on with me, to my great pleasure, and made this a bipartisan piece of legislation and was responsible for helping us get it out of the subcommittee and the full committee. Second person is Chairman Boxer, whose drive and persistence and legislative skill fashioned a majority within the committee and brings this bill to the floor with some momentum behind it. The fact is that twice in the past, in 2003 and 2005, Senator McCain and I brought a comprehensive climate measure to a vote in the full Senate, but we had to do it by amendment because in neither case did the Environment Committee report it out favorably. I will say that the amendment, as is known, lost twice with a high vote total of 44. I am confident that we're going to do a lot better than this in this consideration. So bottom line, Mr. President, this Climate Security Act has reached this point through the regular order, as we say here in the Senate, having earned increasing and diverse political support along the way. And I think that represents a tremendous step forward. The Climate Security Act has a bipartisan list of co-sponsors. In addition to Senator Warner and myself, Senators Coleman, Collins and Dole, Senators Cardin, Casey, Harkin, Klobuchar, Nelson of Florida, Schumer, and Wyden. Each of those members contributed substantively to the bill while also helping garner support for it among other senators and key constituencies. I cannot thank them enough for their help and for the trust that they placed in Senators Warner, Boxer, and myself. Mr. President, Senator Warner and I introduced the Climate Security Act for a very simple but serious reason. It was to protect the environment, economy, and national security of the United States of America from the worst effects of man-made climate change. Is it a problem? Climate change? Well, just last week, the Bush administration itself released a scientific report confirming that if we as a nation fail to take strong action now to cut our emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, then the resulting climate change will impose severe hardship on the American people. The administration's climate change science report finds that over the next 25 to 50 years, increased temperatures will result in slower economic growth and lower yields for staple crops such as corn, soybeans, wheat, and rice. That's slower growth of those crops and lower yields. Arid regions of the United States will face more frequent wildfires, which will be made worse as fire-resistant plants are replaced in the natural order by more combustible grasses. In the American West, the mountain snows that provide a steady flow of water for irrigation and reservoirs will dwindle. Rainfall will come at times and in amounts that will make it hard to manage. The sustained temperature increases will stress livestock, slowing their production and growth rates, reproduction and growth rates, thereby decreasing their milk production and increasing the time to market for animal products. Across the nation, an increased frequency and severity of heat waves will lead to more illness and death, particularly among the young, the elderly, the frail, and the poor. The climatic changes will allow animal, water, and foodborne diseases to spread in the nation or to emerge in areas where they have been limited or had not existed. Mr. President, these are the findings of a report of the Bush administration. Unfortunately, our failure to take any action to reduce or even stabilize our greenhouse gas emissions since the 1980s, when scientists first began to warn us about it, means that some part of the negative impacts described by this administration science report are now inevitable. That's the reality. Greenhouse gases don't go up and dissipate. They accumulate. They're there now, and some consequences are inevitable. But the scientific community tells us that we can still prevent the situation from reaching much worse, even catastrophic proportions, if we take the lead now in reducing emissions of greenhouse gases. That, Mr. President, is what this Climate Security Act would do. The bill beginning in 2012, and remember, that's not now, 2012. So if we begin by passing this legislation now, we're going to have some time to work with it if people find reasons to fix it as we go along before it goes into effect. So beginning in 2012, this legislation would place a cap on the aggregate greenhouse gas emissions of the 2,100 facilities in America that are responsible for 85% of those emissions in this country. Very important point. People out there may wonder, oh my God, is this going to mean I've got in my little business, in my factory, on my farm, am I going to have to start to fill out a lot of paperwork and get involved in this cap and trade business? No. This is an upstream piece of legislation. Only 2,100 facilities in America will be part of this cap and trade proposal. The bill would tighten the cap slowly and steadily, such that the aggregate emissions of those sources of greenhouse gases would be down to about 30% of the current level by 2050. That would be a substantial accomplishment. Making conservative assumptions about actions by other nations, that is, assuming that other nations, including the rising great economic powers like China and India, frankly don't do much. The administration, through another agency, has determined that the emissions reductions achieved by the Climate Security Act would prevent atmospheric greenhouse gas concentrations from reaching the level to which scientists ascribe a high risk of catastrophic impacts. In other words, assuming that a lot of the other big nations don't do much of anything, this bill will make sure that we fulfill our responsibility to protect our citizens. In fact, it would keep global emissions below the catastrophic level. Now, some say it will cost money. It will cost money. But what is the cost? And remember that this sets up a system where money is raised through the auctioning of allowances, but that money, a lot of it, that is, a lot of money will be raised, is immediately reinvested in research and development of new energy technologies, in subsidies to protect people and businesses who are going to be most likely affected by this. You've got to understand, as you consider this bill, that it will not only deal with the problem of global warming. This bill is the Energy Independence, Energy Security Act that America in its right mind should have adopted 30 years ago. People have said we need a Manhattan Project, we need an Apollo moonshot project to make America energy independent, to break our dependence on foreign oil. This legislation will invest more than 6 times the amount of money that the Apollo project and the Manhattan Project combined spent. And we need to do it to free ourselves, free America from dependence on foreign oil from tyrants in places like Iran and Venezuela. Senator Warner and I asked the Energy Information Agency, a section of the Department of Energy of this administration, what the cost would be of our legislation. And they responded that the Climate Security Act's impact on the nation's economic growth would be negligible. The fact is that they say under our bill that America will continue to grow robustly up until 2030, which is the period that they measured, and would hit a level just 0.3% lower than under a business as usual scenario. Mr.
10.
President, those are my opening comments. With great honor and gratitude, I yield to my friend and partner and co-sponsor from Virginia.